G'day there guys, it's your Aussie Hubby Markee, back at it again with another r/JustnoHOA video. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody annoying HOA stories. Our first post is by user Mental Donut, titled, "Am I the a-hole for not inviting the neighborhood snitch or the HOA board to our neighborhood barbecue?" Now, there's around 10 houses in my neighborhood of 120 that are not in the HOA, mine included. We, or previous owners, were smart enough to not join the HOA. As a result, I'm able to make extensions and I have a pool, which I host neighborhood parties occasionally. My HOA is one of the worst HOAs, constantly fining people hundreds of dollars for parking violations, painting their fences the wrong shades of brown, wrong color curtains, having 2 flags, etc. They're not the worst HOA, but they're bad. We also got a crappy neighbor, Jessica, who likes to go around and snap photos of people's violations and then post it on the Nextdoor app to shame them. She prides herself in this, thinking it makes the neighborhood better when she shames the Smiths for having a fence that's 2 inches too high, or the Johnsons for having light brown door instead of a dark brown door. Jessica is a bloody bear. She probably costs the neighbors thousands of dollars in fees or forcing them to renovate. I absolutely lost my crap when Jessica posted in the Nextdoor app about how Mrs. Jensen, 85-year-old woman, currently having serious medical issues, has a lawn that's a couple inches too high. She obviously can't mow the lawn and was too busy to notice. The HOA then fined her $500. I made a post in the Nextdoor app about the Nextdoor app, saying that the suburban fascists on the HOA nor Jessica were invited to my barbecue at my house. Jessica went on a rant saying how much of an angel she is and how she protects the neighborhood doing her duty. And I told her she's a low-life scumbag, busybody, and is a pathetic loser with nothing better to do. A couple people said I was bullying and excluding, and like 4 of her friends are boycotting my party and hosting their own party. The party happened and nobody else showed up to theirs, and ours was a blast. She apparently cried over it. So guys, who's the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. People like her are the worst for neighborhoods. Glad you don't tolerate her crap. Doing the Lord's work. And HOAs should be shut down as predatory. Charging an elderly woman for maintenance she's incapable of performing is no different than a parasitic relative moving in and wheedling her out of money. There's a reason they lose court cases for illegal overreach. If Jessica was as neighborly as she likes to pretend she is, she would have noticed the elderly neighbor's grass growing too tall and organized the HOA members to take turns maintaining the lawn until the neighbor was recovered from the surgery. You know, like a community that looks out for each other would do. Instead, she decided to use the HOA as a weapon. Right? Our yard got taken over by dead nettleweeds/flowers, so looked overgrown, even though the grass itself hadn't started growing much yet. Husband has been working Saturdays, so hadn't gotten a chance to get to it yet. Our sweet neighbor's kid, who's like 9, came over and asked if he could do it for me since he saw I was busy with our toddler and work. Neighbors need to be more like that and not like the crazy chick feeding the HOA predators. Just gonna throw this out there. You're the a-hole for throwing a neighborhood barbecue during the coronavirus outbreak, not the a-hole if this was any other time. To be fair, the risk of infection during an imaginary barbecue is quite low. Come on. Not the a-hole. As someone currently living in an HOA, they are the devil. We've been fined because someone snitched on us for leaving our trash cans out after trash day, and almost got another because we had weeds in our front yard, because our neighbors can't be asked to remove theirs. Your neighbor deserved it, lol. Agreed. Screw HOAs. When we were looking for a house, no HOA was at the top of my list. Like, I didn't care if the house was perfect. If it was in an HOA, I didn't want it. Screw that noise. And our next post is by user AmanDuck10, titled, "My First Stupid Ass HOA." I moved my family to SW Houston, Southwest Houston, from Seattle end of January. Big move. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest all my life, and where I lived, HOAs weren't really a thing. I've read this sub forever, and knew I would probably end up in an HOA in Texas, fine, whatever. What's nice is we moved from a small 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,100 square foot townhome to a beautiful 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 3-bath with an office for my husband. We now have a backyard for our 3-year-old, and I love it. Anyway, I booked our move with a popular freight company. We loaded up a 28-foot trailer and sent it on its way. It was delivered to our new home January 27th around 5 PM, parked in our large driveway. We flew in January 29th and had movers unloaded. The trailer was picked up January 31st around 2 PM. That's the soonest the freight company could come get it. February 26th, we got a notice and a call from the management company we rent from that the HOA is demanding we move the trailer out of sight. It's violating XYZ code, and to prevent a fine, it needs to be done now. I was a little baffled, as the trailer had been gone almost a week at this point. Okay, I wasn't just baffled, I was raging out. Stupid frickers, we were moving in. The management company contacted the HOA management and let them know we had just moved in and the trailer had been gone for 6 days. They argued that someone had seen it the day before. I went outside and took a video and shot that over to the rental management, and they were like, "What the hell?" I then called and was put in a voicemail where I explained nicely the timeline and that I just moved in, and that's why the trailer was there in the first place. Nobody ever called me back. Since then, I've joined Nextdoor and our HOA group, and man, there are some snitches that need stitches. Lots of people taking pictures of lawns and complaining about neighbors. Wish me luck. Here's what I suggest. Next time anyone on Nextdoor complains about a neighbor's grass being too long, or too many weeds, or any BS maintenance item, tell the group that you're new to the area and ask the group who it is. Tell them that you want to introduce yourself to that neighbor, and ask them if they need any help with yard maintenance, because that's the Christian thing to do. I bet most of those nitpickers would describe themselves as good Christians, and hopefully this would put them to shame. Sounds good, except I'm atheist, but I like the concept, good looking out. You can still use their good Christian morals against them. In Texas, I guarantee that most of them are Bible thumpers. Stereotype much? I live in North Texas. This isn't a stereotype. If they start to say that your theism is against God, wait a few days and say that they're right, and you have converted to the only true religion, and thus have decided to convert to Judaism or even to Islam, or have become Confucian. All 3 of them are older than whatever form of Protestant religion they practice, and are wildly different as well. Or, just get a set of orange robes and say you've become Buddhist, and wish peace be unto them. Point out all these religions also are firm on the point of charity to all, and that all are for helping those in need. So here's the best way to deal with idiot HOAs, off of them. Document the crap out of everything. They claim the container was there on Saturday? Include a pickup document from the company that confirms it was removed on Thursday. They claim your 3 dogs bark too much? Get a printout from the vet proving that you only have a cat. They say your kid was throwing a party on X date? Provide flight information that he was in the Pacific Northwest with his grandparents. Seriously, an email chain with hard proof of their idiocy is your best defense against bloody HOAs. The problem is, it almost certainly is not the HOA behind it. It was a bloody resident with a stick up their ass. Most HOAs don't drive around every day looking for problems. Usually the board members only meet once a month, and when they do, it's just to review financials. Property managers usually just drive to the neighborhood every other week, looking for problems with things like landscaping and maintenance issues of common areas. When it comes to petty rule-like violations like this, it's almost always the result of a dip-crap neighbor sticking their nose where it doesn't belong by reporting it to the management company or board. And when that happens, the HOA has an obligation to address it. Agreed. After a series of complaints that are proven wrong though, there's a pattern of harassment that the board and management company has to consider. I know in our first neighborhood, the residents demanded photos with the time and date stamps of violations. Wonder of wonders, violations dropped. The thing is, HOA may have power, but they're still beholden to the rules of evidence. If they can't prove beyond a nosy neighbor that A, B, or C happened via an emailed complaint, then it didn't happen. Their lawyers know it, they should know it, and mediation/courts absolutely know it. I'm dealing with bullcrap from 2 separate HOAs right now. One is standard and the other is legal. Screw HOAs and autocorrect. Our next post is by user EmmaLizard, titled, "Bought a condo, was not given the full pet policy before purchase. Can they make me get rid of my dog?" Okay, so I purchased my first home, a condo. I have a dog and she's about 40 pounds. As a responsible dog owner, I mentioned to the realtor that I have a dog. Mentioned it at the open house to the other realtor that I have a dog. I also asked him if there are let restrictions. Me knowing the area, read the bylaws of the condo HOA to learn about their pet policy. There was nothing about breed or size restrictions. Basically just, only 1 dog per unit, she can't be barking all night, and I have to clean up her poop. Cool. This place still works? About a week later I signed the papers and it's mine. I talked to someone from the COA yesterday, and she informs me that their pet policy was changed a while ago and only dogs under 30 pounds are allowed. I informed her I was not told this information, and if I was, I obviously would not have made the purchase, and it is not in their bylaws. She even admitted that they needed to make it clear to buyers. Apparently they emphasize it with renters. Are they allowed to say my dog is not allowed? I am seriously considering not even moving in and reselling. Leaving my dog is not an option. What do your papers say? If you signed with them with no weight limit, they can't go back and make you get rid of her. That would be breaking their contract. When I signed, there was nothing in the bylaws about dog weight limits when I purchased. I honestly don't remember signing a paper on it for my community in particular until I did the new resident form yesterday. They weren't even told about me buying the place, which happened about 2 weeks ago. But apparently the rule had been changed a while ago and the sellers or the agent should have told me. Isn't that why they sent me the bylaws and all the condo documents? To inform me of the rules? Doesn't matter. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Also to note, you do not need to resign your contract just for them to add that. Do make sure they don't have any verbiage that says they can change anything with or without notification. Thank you. I will look more into that. I didn't read anything about me signing a contract with my COA specifically. Just as an owner, I have to follow their rules and pay them an absurd amount of money every month. Even with that, I thought, this is fine. There's beautifully maintained paths all around, a fitness room. I don't have to do any exterior housework. I'm situated within walking distance, under a mile, of 2 very dog-friendly town centers. I was so excited for my first home. But like I said, leaving my dog is not an option. So I've kind of been a wreck the past 24 hours, and I did my work looking into making sure she was allowed. Makes me sad I can't rescue another dog, but I did know the 1 dog per unit law going in. I'd think this falls under major problem with the property not disclosed, which might allow you to terminate the contract. State laws vary, so act fast, within the week if possible. You could possibly get grandfathered in since they didn't tell you, but it's a bad sign that the COA is trying to impose a rule not on paper. What else will they think up? And if you do stay, will they start to harass you? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Unless my neighbors hate dogs. Like, she's generally calm. She doesn't really bark, and I trained her not to. The thing is though, with COVID, everything's been slow. I'm lucky I'm still with my parents. I came, furnished place, can't even buy toilet paper. So I signed all my papers over a week ago. The COA didn't even know I bought until I decided to be proactive and try to fill out their parking registration. Their parking policy is ridiculous. It's like 3 pages long, but I knew that going in because I actually read the documents. At this point in, I'm very grateful my mum told me I couldn't rescue the Malamute mix that I wanted. If I did, I couldn't move home after grad school. I think then they might really get on me about it. But my girl Charlie looks a little like a yellow lab, fully grown at about 40 pounds. She's supposedly golden/hound/pit. Do not mention she is part pit. Lots of places dislike pits, and it may get you in trouble. I'd stick with, as far as I know, she's just a mutt, but the vet thinks she has some golden, maybe some hound or terrier in her. Oh, I know. Pits get such a bad rep. Some of her litter mates got the DNA test or whatever and had some, but you'd never know looking at any of them. And there's an update in that post. Contacted my realtor, who is also a family friend. She said pay the move-in fee, even though that's normally only a thing when an elevator is involved, and just go with the new parking policy. But just follow on what the docs I got sent say. They might be out of date, but that's a massive oversight on the COA. She is willing to go with me to any meetings they force me into for breaking the bylaws, especially my dog being over the weight limit that did not exist. She looked back over those documents and had her husband look over them as well. Also a realtor, he's on the selling end of things. Because she thought the change in policies were weird too. Especially when I pointed out the last resolutions to the bylaws were put in place in 2009. So I guess we will see what they say about my dog and the changes I'm doing on the interior of my place. But I should be allowed to follow those documents. And my dog, even if she was 100 pounds, should be allowed to stay. If they question it, I have a leg to stand on. Still puts a salty taste in my mouth. Do they not expect buyers to read the documents? Our next post is by a user, JustnoHOA, titled, Stay at home, even on the HOA property? Hi all. As many of you know, there is a stay-at-home order in Illinois. However, according to the order, Illinoisans, or aliens, are still allowed to leave their homes to take walks or get exercise, drive on both local roads and interstate highways, go to grocery stores, gas stations and pharmacies for supplies and services, go to work for essential businesses and operations, and take care of others. It doesn't sound like they have any restrictions going by that. Given that information, today I was out of my condo with my spouse, going to our car to get some groceries, and one of our elderly neighbors was having a walk outside. This is the concrete area considered the road on the property surrounding the parking lots and buildings. Not in any one or any car's way, and waved to us. Our HOA president was sitting in their vehicle, doing what? Who knows, God knows. In the parking lot. The president turned to the elderly neighbor and told them to get back inside and they cannot walk outside because of the stay-at-home order. Is this total bullcrap? Yes, it's bullcrap. The HOA does not have the authority on this matter, and you can still legally exit your home to do things like go to the grocery, or even just for a walk. Outdoor exercise has always been given as an acceptable reason for going outside, and you still see tons of walkers and joggers about here in the streets of Chicago. In fact, much more than normal, since the lakefront path was closed. That said, I have seen more than my fair share of people who think that the order is too lax and taken it on themselves to try to drive people inside. I've been told that going outside for a run should be treated akin to manslaughter, since I'm needlessly putting others people at risk. Really, the only thing you can do is ignore these shelter-in-place vigilantes. They tend to be fear-prone busybodies who are using a legitimate crisis to justify their behavior without any restraint. But it kind of sucks if you're an elderly person who might not know any better. Could they be doing that to keep people from maintaining their yards so they can find them? That's both cynical and clever, lol. There's no yard to maintain. These are just condos with no yard. I'm convinced that power has totally gone to our HOA president's head, and that he can just boss people around. That's exactly the case 99% of the time. It always comes down to these HOA boards containing power-hungry fueled people who find an avenue to control others. But through small enforceable governance, it's much easier to become a board member and police others than it is to run for a political office or be an LEO. So it makes the HOA route a much more attainable goal on their thirst for power and control. Our next post is by CCL18, titled, HOA wants to test my floor soundproofing. Hey all, I live in a condo building and the neighbors downstairs have been complaining all the time about the noise coming from my unit. I'm not wearing shoes on hardwood floor or blasting my subwoofer or anything ridiculous, but they have a small child, and every time I close my cabinet or just walk around my unit, I would be sure to hear them complain. I tried to be nice, but it's still not enough. so I'm kinda ticked off at this point too. The downstairs neighbour, through the HOA, is now requesting an acoustic test to see if my floor is up to code. Mind you, I never did renovation or change anything after I moved in 2 years ago, so the floor has always been the same. I am annoyed by this guy already and don't want to agree to this. I don't see anything in the HOA rules on this either. Do I have to agree on this, or am I within my right to tell the HOA to pee off? Don't let them in. The board members are not qualified to understand building codes. There's no reason for them to be doing this testing in the downstairs unit. The person below you is the one with noise complaints, right? Shouldn't they pay a professional to measure there? Sound baffles can be installed to a ceiling at least as easily as to a floor. Who is they? The OP has no obligation to the downstairs neighbour. They, in this case, seems to refer to the downstairs neighbour. There's probably some level of obligation, but downstairs should first have to demonstrate something more than "I can hear my neighbour." I do not see how this could be enforced, especially during the next 18 months where you are under no obligation to let strangers in your home. Legally, this is also questionable, as what does up to code have to do with noise? Is he saying you are going to fall through the floor? All in all, I would just ignore it. He's probably crazy, and you don't want to give him anything at all to try and turn around on you. I would see if your HOA has quiet hours or anything, like if it does from 8 AM to 8 PM, I would be as loud as possible, and then immediately go back to normal on quiet hours. I mean, if you were maliciously compliant enough. Read a story on one of these subs about how someone had a night shift and was trying to sleep on the upstairs apartment was remodeling for a movie. Not only did they make a ton of noise, but also redid the floor in their apartment and took the floor completely out and only repaired it on their side. So the owner of the downstairs apartment was left with a ceiling in shambles and floor repair pieces all over their own floor, so they decided to do the sensible thing and placed a boombox up against the thin section of the floor that they had just replaced and blasted hentai noises all day and night, making it impossible to film, and they eventually gave up trying to film at that location. Nice. Our next post is by Codeman180, titled, "Condo Association didn't notify me of missed payments after autopay cancelled. Sent payments to debt collector." My condo association was bought out in December, and due to that, my autopay was cancelled as well. This was something I was not aware of, nor made aware of by my condo association until now. I am 4 months past due and owe over $1,000. Fortunately, I can afford this apartment, but my issue is that I don't think I should be paying any late fees or debt collector fees. They have my email on record and never notified me of any of this. Is there any action I can take to avoid any fees? Should a condo association have to notify you of any missed/late payments? It just bugs the heck out of me that they could have spent 60 seconds typing me an email saying they weren't receiving payments instead of sending it to a debt collector. Edit, you guys are quick to answer. Thanks for all the advice. I'm still waiting on a reply from the association. Check your local laws. If they didn't properly notify you of an overdue balance and skipped 2 collections, then you may be able to get some late charges cancelled. Truthfully, they should do it as a goodwill measure anyway. They screwed up, they should have notified you via snail mail that your first payment was overdue as soon as it passed the due date. Give or take a week or past the grace period if listed. Goodwill, HOA. Ha! What a good joke. I've personally foreclosed on dozens of people in the OP's situations. She'll be lucky to get someone on the phone. That's not good. My condo association was bought out. How does that happen? Do you mean the former management company was replaced with a new one? Either way, they should have at the very least notified you of a change, and that auto payments would need to be changed, and that your dues were not received. If you can afford to pay all the fees in a lump sum, I'd recommend you offer to do so and demand they eliminate any late fees or collection fees. Yes, the former management company was replaced with a new one. Sorry, I guess bought out isn't what you would call it. They notified me of the management change, but nothing about the auto payments. I just wish they sent me one stinking email to me and this wouldn't be a problem. Appreciate the advice. Don't know if this was mentioned, but we will send out emails and mail to residents. I still hear they didn't get it. Come to find out it went to spam or a family member threw the mail away. That's what they tell me. We only collect annually, so a bit different. But we also put a huge sign at the entrance of subdivision too. But I'm glad it didn't go on for more than 4 months for you. Hope it gets worked out. And our last post is by user GD3123, titled, Being illegally kicked out of my residence during COVID pandemic. How to proceed. Short version. My aunt owns a place in Islamorada, Florida, that I've leased from her for the last 6 months. The HOA has demanded I leave the residence immediately, by tomorrow morning, or they will have me arrested. This is the second time they've said this to me, and they claim I am an illegal occupant, which is not true. My aunt is calling her attorneys, but what should I do in this case? They have been intimidating me with legal threats like they know the cops, good old boy type town, you know? And that I should listen to them and leave immediately. I'd like to leave because I am now worried for my safety, but there is literally nowhere to go given the current COVID pandemic. They say if I'm not gone by the morning, the cops will be here and arrest me and put me in jail. They have been very direct and forceful about this, and refuse to call the homeowners whom I now have a legal lease with. They have given me no reason as to why I'm being asked to vacate other than I'm an illegal occupant, because the board was never approved my lease. They have been aware I have been here for over 6 months and have never said a word until now. I could go into the real reasons they want me gone. They want the property of my aunt, who is elderly, for pennies on the dollar, contract renovations to their own companies, and sell it for tons. I am in the way as I fixed the place up so my aunt doesn't have to sell. They've done this with many of the units here since taking over around 5 years ago. My aunt has owned the property for over 30 years. Sorry for the long post. I am looking for advice on how I can vacate to avoid the threats that they've given me, but also be able to take legal action afterwards. Any advice welcome, and thanks for listening. If you have a legal lease with the property owner, then any dispute with the HOA is between the property owner and the HOA, not with you. I'm not completely familiar with Florida law on the topic, but I've seen several cases where the homeowners rented out homes in neighborhoods where the T&Cs expressly forbid rentals or required pre-approval. The HOAs weren't able to take any action against the renters, but they were able to apply escalating fines against the landowners for violating the covenants and to pressure them to remove the renters on their own. Depending on how Florida state law works and how the T&Cs are written, it might be theoretically possible for them to begin eviction proceedings against you, but I can't imagine they'd have the power to arbitrarily negate your lease agreement and throw you out onto the street. Either way, have your lease agreement ready. You may need to show it to the police. Remember, I am a legal tenant with a lease from the property owner. If her rental of this property has violated the HOA's rules, they need to take it up with her. Do keep in mind, however, that the HOA may legitimately have a lease approval clause in their T&Cs. If that's the case, your aunt may be looking at steep fines. She needs to review the HOA rules ASAP. Alright, I think I'm going to leave the episode there, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of r/JustnoHOA. There's not too much, content for these ones, so this is probably just going to be like a weekly or monthly thing if I can get the ball rolling on it. Hope you enjoyed this one today. Tell me what you thought about it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you're up to today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!